Symbolic History Through Sight and Sound, 16 Giants in the Earth, 16th Century. In The Winter's Tale, the living Hermione is presented as a statue by that rare Italian master Giulio Romano, who, had he himself eternity and could put breath into his work, would beguile nature of her custom, so perfectly is he her ape. In this 1530 Mantuan vault, his heaven-storming giants fall under the rocks of Pelion and Ossa. In the Tientos of Cabithon, we feel what turned the loves and thought of that century toward Prometheus, Icarus, Phaeton, and Faust. There were giants in the earth in those days when the sons of God came in unto the daughters of men. And when the spiritual force stored in medieval creed condensers struck through the physical, it stirred gargantuan prodigies, the arts of space and mass, Hermetic and Lucretian science, Reformation, utopias, world conquest, Platonic love, the age of gold, in the dark gathering of the fugue, or the late works of Michelangelo. In this Titian, the very crushing of pride evokes powers unknown before, giants, most of all, giants in their overthrow. Call Leonardo the first of the Titans, one who, with mirror writing and smiling secrecy, left us in doubt how far he enacted the myth of Icarus. If well made and turned swiftly, the said screw will make it spiral in the air, and it will rise high. On another page, a man's descent measures the lift of a starched linen wing. When he has great wings attached to him, by exerting his strength against the resistance of the air, man is enabled to subdue it and to raise himself upon it. Tomorrow morning, on the 2nd day of January, 1496, I will make the thong and the attempt. The vision would haunt Goya after 300 years. While in Tansillo's mid-century sonnet, Poi che spiegato l'ale al bel desio, Icarus becomes the symbol Bruno would appropriate for his heroic furies. Paralleled by the Phaeton of Michelangelo's 1533 drawing. Since first my soul beat wings to the high desire, the vaster sense of air beneath my tread, the swifter pinions to the air I spread, till spurning earth toward heaven I aspire. Not Didal's son warns with example dire that I descend or bow my threatened head. For though with him I plummet earthward dead, what is life's candle to this funeral pyre? I hear my heart's voice through the dusky air. Whither, O fearless darer, would you dare? Not without wreck this giant temerity. Fear not, I answer, what the ruin may be. Hold secure to the clouds and calmly die, content, if heaven allow, a death so high. It was the aspiration that raised Bruno toward his 1600 blaze. On August 2nd, 1473, the 21-year-old Leonardo walked out of Florence and sketched what he saw. What opened was the organic fabric of the world. In the notebooks, an animism defiant as the space toward the right of the picture. The body of the earth, like the bodies of animals, is interwoven with a network of veins which are all joined together and are formed for the nutrition and vivifying of this earth and its creatures. Have you seen how the water that drips from the severed branches of the vine and falls back upon the roots enters into the power of its mover and rises up anew? So the sea, through passages of the earth, returns upward. 40 years later, the bearded old man, in abstract sketches and notes, endows deluge with the cataclysmic necessity of science. Let the fragments of a mountain have fallen into the depths of one of the valleys, and there form a barrier, the swollen waters coursing round the pool which confines them, and striking against various obstacles with whirling eddies, leap into the air in turbid foam, and then, falling back, cause the waters where they strike to be dashed up, so that the angle of reflection will be equal to the angle of incidence. Waves of the sea at Piombino, all of foaming water. Such dark recurrents, Agricola, framed in a geology I once turned to blank verse. So water, working down the block plateau, cuts deep in shale and leaves the granite whole, rearing the mountains, which upreared the rain that cut vales, cuts in turn, and levels all to plain. Thus I perceive the universal sway. By the same power that builds, all things decay. Leonardo's grotesques share in the gargantuan future of his notebook fable. I will create a fiction which shall express great things. So Rabelais, paraphrasing Erasmus' folly, jests not so foolish as would appear, stuffed with high conceptions, allegorical. Leonardo. In the month of June there appeared a giant who came from the Libyan desert. When he fell, the people, believing he had been killed by some thunderbolt, began scurrying over his huge limbs and piercing them with wounds. He, being roused, set his hands on the ground, and lifting up his awful countenance, placed a hand on his head. Perceiving it to be covered with men sticking to the hairs, he shook himself and sent the men flying through the air like hail. Then he stood erect, trampling them with his feet. The black visage terrifying, swollen, bloodshot eyes under lowering brows, a snout nose, wide nostrils, stuck with bristles, between huge lips a mouth like a cave. That energy would run from the affirming laughter of Rabelais to the grieved negations of Swift, the Brobdingnagian breast. The rival Florentine giant was Michelangelo. It was above the entrance wall that he began the Sistine ceiling. This Delphic Sibyl, about 1509, has the proportioned containment of his earlier Madonnas, though already, as in a ceremony motet by Isaac, everything flexes with grandeur. In a Brummel Gloria, Isaac's 4 voices have been magnified to 12. And when Michelangelo, after 2 years of painting the always expanding vision of creation, conceived the last of the prophets, Jonah, under the torsional twist of the creating God, himself in ecstatic torsion, overflowing his vaulted space, foreshortening it into depth, an expansion which dwarfs the flabby damnation whale, that anagogical theophany of soul from hell as light from darkness, empowered, an exuberant might of body. Against which, from the earliest Christian centuries, Jonah's mystical delivery, as by Christ's descent from the limbo leviathan of eternal death, melts with the Roman heritage of Attic skills in melismas of Ambrosian Alleluia, those jubilous melismas which stirred and troubled Augustine. There had been giants before that melting. When the Apollonius torso was brought to the Belvedere by the Medici Pope Clement VII, Michelangelo found in it the type and inspiration of his own pathos of body. So the Promethean poem of Lucretius, recovered by Poggio Bracciolini, pointed beyond God-fearing habits and taboos. When human life lay prostrate on the earth, a man of Greece against the lowering gods dared traverse in mind the immeasurable universe beyond the flaming walls of the world, like the ripple of muscles in the torso, that flammantia moenia mundi. Yet when Lucretius was replanted in the infinite search of the Christian West, it reached in Tansillo's Icarian flight, amor m'impenna l'ale, love plumes my wings, and eternal the honor if mortal the leap, or in the infinite worlds of Bruno's thought, as far beyond itself as Michelangelo's struggling giants exceed the might and longing of Greco-Rome. Out of the religious immediacy of the Gothic North, Grünewald, Michelangelo's contemporary, shapes as radical a claim of death and nature raised to spirit as any in the Hermetic doctrine of signatures by the Swiss Paracelsus, self-styled Prince of Philosophy and Medicine. The winding sheet that enfolds Christ shifts in an unparalleled symbolism of color from the gray blues and browns of earth, death, and the grave, up through incarnate blood to become the received and transmitted glow of pure sol, alchemical gold, poured from the face and hair of the man-God. From Grünewald's crucifixions to this is from Scotch Dunbar's Timor mortis conturbat me to the aureate leap of his dawns. Up sprang the golden candle matutine and spread his beams out pure and crystalline. The skies rang with shouting of the larks. The ruddy heaven, overspread with silver bands, gilded every tree, leaf, branch, and bark. As in the besouled world of German Altdorfer, Dunbar's dawns are the resurrection, his resurrection, dayspring. Done is a battle on the dragon black. He for our sake that suffered to be slain, and like a lamb in sacrifice was dight, is like a lion risen up again, and as a giant raxed him on height, sprung in as aurora, radius and bright, on loft is gone the glorious Apollo, the blissful day departed fro the night, surrexit Dominus de sepulchro. How greatly music after Josquin, hosannas that auroral lion and giant, so Taverna. The heaven stormer was Europe, and at its heart the cosmic humanization of God. About the time of Michelangelo's Jonah and torsional light from dark, Dürer, here standing on the curved earth, lower right, shows the causal measure of the sacred universe. Copernicus, born 2 years after Dürer, was writing his commentary through the same years, though its publication was delayed. We cannot say his observations were better than Ptolemy's, certainly not his mathematics. His science takes its strength from what would culminate in Leibniz, the world marriage of causal reason and faith. Copernicus' God prefers the simplicity and beauty of sun-centered circles. How exceedingly fine is the godlike work of the best and greatest artist. Still, the unknown ellipses required corrective epicycles. Thus 34 circles suffice to explain the entire structure of the universe and ballet of the planets. How much God would have preferred his circles to be 7. To what paven of pomp, humanist light and reason seemed now to enter the lists of state, Maximilian, Francis I, Charles V. We should add Henry VIII, of course, whose meeting with Francis at the 1520 Field of the Cloth of Gold Shakespeare would recount, when those sons of glory, those two lights of men, met in the Vale of Andren. Men might say, till this time pomp was single, but now married to one above itself, all in gold. Every man that stood showed like a mine, though, as the play allows, the glittering chivalries ministered communication of a most poor issue. Statecraft reenacting the fiasco of Faust. Those cultured kings against our television hacks. Maximilian, with his 6 languages, art, music, friend and patron of the skilled and wise. For all their great aims, what a hash they made of Europe. Under the knightly mask, the opportunism of Machiavelli, Kaiser Maximilian, 1511. Nothing would better become us than to receive the papal office. We have decided to raise up to 300,000 ducats through the Fugger Bank in Rome, our crown jewels as security. If Fugger, here Durer's portrait of Jacob, shrewd capitalist prototype, wishes to know how we will redeem those treasures, the estates of the empire, hereditary principalities and lands, 1/3 of all our income from the papacy, until it is paid. What Fugger money in fact secured was the election of Charles V. Nor did this Jacob's 1523 demand for payment help the continuing indulgence scandal. It is clear as day that your imperial majesty could not have acquired the Roman crown without my help. I humbly petition that the sum of money due me, together with the interest, should be discharged and paid to me without further delay. With capital, why not the counter-giant of socialism? Geismar, leader of the peasants' rebellion in Tyrol, thought to dissolve clergy, privilege, cities, and business in a classless purity of faith. All smelting houses and mines which belong to nobles or foreign merchants, such as the Fuggers, shall be confiscated and given over to public ownership. This is Geismar's constitution, when he dreams in his chimney corner and imagines himself a prince. No wonder Thomas More, painted by realist Holbein, lets his utopian narrator despair of counseling princes. If I should propose to any king wholesome decrees, how deaf hearers, think you, should I have? Rather he dreams, like Geismar, of a communism both early Christian and modern, where possessions be private, where money beareth all the stroke. It is hard and almost impossible that there the weal public may justly be governed and prosperously flourish. For who knoweth not that fraud, theft, brawling, strife, murder, treason die when money dieth? And though More wears velvet and fur with a great chain of gold, he clothes his sober citizens like Huguenots or Puritans, and sets them, after 6 hours of common work, to wholesome exercise, then to lectures and solemn music in their public halls. Everywhere the drive for heaven turns to the world. As Luther comments on Galatians, and Dürer shows it in his Apostles, when I have this righteousness ruling in my heart, I descend from heaven as the rain making fruitful the earth. That is to say, I come forth into another kingdom, and I do good works. If I be a householder, I govern my house. Yet Luther's zeal stiffens to self-righteousness. I teach those things only which are commanded me from above. Therefore my doctrine is true, sincere, certain, and of God. Therefore whatever doctrine teaches not as mine does must needs be false, devilish, accursed. Calvin most clearly phrased how the new faith should raise the will by its very denial, that man, in miserable necessity, should aspire to the good of which he is destitute, and to the liberty of which he is deprived, and should be roused from indolence with even more earnestness than if he were supposed to be possessed of the greatest strength. Were not the energies of Christendom sprung from the start of incarnate paradox? What are we calling giant? The Soliman Mosque, erected in Constantinople from 1550 to 57, points the question. Are not those vast and area rivals of Hagia Sophia more gigantic in impact than anything from Renaissance Europe, though St. Peter's was then building and is larger? Yet surely there are clues here to the dynamic imbalance by which Istanbul would fall behind with the rest of the Orient and be westernized. The city had been taken by the Ottomans in 1453. Turkish conquest would go on for a century, reaching almost to Vienna, while Europe pursued its Machiavellian broils. But at the Byzantine heart, the late 15th century arcades of the Topkapi Palace look to Tuscany and Venice. What was mighty in the West was a ferment of ideals and hopes, Christian free humanism, transforming self and world, though against sultanic display. The quieter harmonies of Italian Renaissance seem hardly overweening. 1,500 witnesses in all the arts, a style of articulated repose, into which older painters, here Giovanni Bellini, move, or where the younger, as Raphael, begin. It affines San Nazzaro's Arcadia to the choral music of the Frotoli and Lauds, the Scala. But that calm throbs with pastoral and Neoplatonic dream, stirring the perfection Quixote was bound to espouse next to chivalry, the age of gold. So corteccia for the Medici, o begli anni dell'oro, o secol divo, vedrò io mai? Meanwhile, as in art, from Bellini to Giorgione and Titian, the Frotoli repose advances with the mingling of north and south to the swelling dynamic of the madrigal. Arcadelt is transitional, il bianco e dolce cigno. To learn what is Promethean here, listen to the chords. These full triads of the heart sound music's utopian claim. Here an erotic swan excess, I would die 1,000 times a day. With the same pictures, this Correggio, the romantic Raphael's most romantic scene, when Abimelech saw Isaac with Rebekah, and the Giorgione, let us savor a sonnet by Moltke. Now spring returns to clothe the native hill, and in the valley spreads her finery, and odors such as breathe from Araby, her garland tresses on the wind distill. At this dear season to my window sill, Chloris comes with the sun. Vestiva I colli e le campagne intorno, la primavera di novelli onori, espirava suave arabi odori, cinta d'erbe e di fiori il crine adorno, quando li cori all'apparir del giorno, gathering purple flowers with her hand, in guiderdon di tanti ardori, in recompense for so much love, she murmurs, these I have culled, and with them here adorn you. Typical the rift